obviously one of the first jobs that people have been talking about being automated with AI technology are truckers. And I mean, people have been talking about that for a while because of the self-driving cars that Elon Musk and Tesla have been pushing. Even though if you actually look into the self-driving cars that Tesla has been pushing, they've been promising self-driving cars for like 5 years now. And we still don't have them. So they're just continually lying about that technology in order to draw money from investors, or Elon is, and lying about the place that they're at and then excusing it by just saying, well, we're headed in the right direction, right? It's okay to be ambitious and say that you're going to have self-driving cars in 2017 and then not have them by 2023. But either way, neither here nor there. Tucker Carlson, talking to Ben Shapiro, was asked about self-driving cars, and he gave a pretty based answer. There was another recent, I don't know how recent it was, but another clip from this conversation. I think it was the same conversation between Carlson and Shapiro, where Shapiro's just giving his, bland right-wing talking point. Socialism is evil. Why are so many kids today socialists? And Tucker's like, well, look at the economy. You have kids who are working hard, kids who aren't doing drugs all day, who are working hard to get a degree, working multiple jobs, and they still don't have enough money to pay their rent. They still don't have enough money to get by. And you're surprised that, kids are turning to socialism rather than capitalism. And Shapiro's head about exploded, but that's what happens when you just throw a little bit of critical thinking and a little bit of critical thought into these conservative dogmas and talking points, which obviously Tucker Carlson has been doing more of lately. So let's watch the video and then we'll meet back here and discuss.
This is Tucker Carlson talking to Ben Shapiro.
If you wake up one morning and you find yourself in a society where 23-year-olds with 4-year college degrees and like initiative who aren't smoking weed every day, if they can't make enough to buy a car, much less a home, much less get married, much less have children, then why should you be surprised when half of them say they prefer socialism?
Well,
you should not be surprised.
I agree to a certain extent. I think that the question is when the pedal hits the metal. Like you talk in the book about technology and how it's shifting and taking away jobs from folks. Yes. And you make specific reference to truck driving and the fact that there are going to be these automated cars on the roads. So would you, Tucker Carlson, be in favor of restrictions on the ability of trucking companies to use this sort of technology specifically to, sort of artificially maintain the number of jobs that are available in the trucking industry?
Are you joking? In a second. In other words, if I were president, when I say to DOT, to Department of Transportation, we're not letting driverless trucks on the road, period. Why? Really simple. Driving for a living is the single most common job for high school educated men in this country, in all 50 states. By the way, that's the same group whose wages have gone down by 11% over the past 30 years. The social cost of eliminating their jobs in a 10-year span, 5-year span, 30-year span is so high that it's not sustainable. So the greater good is protecting your citizens from, look, capitalism is the best economic system I can think of, I think that anyone's ever thought of, but that doesn't mean that it's a religion and everything about it is good.
No, but
there's no Nicene Creed of capitalism that I have to buy into. What I care about is living in a country where, decent people can live happy lives, actually. And so, no, I would say immediately, no, are you joking? And I maybe would make up some pretext for public consumption, like, oh, they're dangerous. The technology is not quite finessed. No. But the truth would be, I don't want to put 10 million men out of work because you're going to have 10 million dead families, and the cascading effect from that will wreck your country.
So
Ben just,
well, actually, let me just say why capitalism is actually the best.
Ben Shapiro destroyed by facts and logic once again. That's super interesting. You see, I mean, like I said, Tucker's got a little bit of populism and a little bit of critical thinking in him, and that's just enough to blow apart the conservative dogmas that Ben Shapiro spews every day without pushback. He goes on these echo chambers and gives these pro-capitalist talking points and treats capitalism like it's a religion, where you need to embrace every aspect of it. And when he meets a little bit of pushback, he implodes. But obviously, Tucker is just saying that we should stop the advance of technology, the march of technology in order to protect these truck drivers, when in fact, under socialism, that technology would liberate us. It would liberate us from having to drive on the road 10 hours a day to bring materials back and forth. We could have self-driving cars do it, but under a capitalist system, and this is something Marx details in depth in Capital Volume 1, automation throws workers out of the workplace. It throws them onto the streets. So rather than automation liberating humanity from these really hard jobs, this really hard, dangerous toiling, it instead throws people into poverty. It throws people into homelessness. And that's what we're seeing now with AI, threatening all these graphic designers and editors and truck drivers and stuff. It's the same thing that automation has always done. Same thing that happened in the Industrial Revolution when new machines were making it so, you needed less workers to produce the same amount of commodities, threw people out of the workplace. So the answer is socialism. Capitalism's not the best economic system that anyone's ever thought of. It's actually not an economic system we just thought of and invented. It's a system that developed out of other systems. But we can do much better. We can use automation, harness the advance of technology, and use it to liberate and improve society and get rid of material want.
I'm so proud right now because those are all the things that I wrote down. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this idea that you think about capitalism and then you do it is completely inverse. You start reflectively thinking about what capitalism as capitalism is in reality. A few hundred years after you've had capitalist practices come to dominate and become the dominant mode of production. Adam Smith is not talking about capitalism. He's talking about industrialists and masters. And it's really at the sort of quarter to middle of the 19th century where you can begin to talk about capitalism as a system. So that's one thing there. But I mean, for him, who was like the largest show in mainstream media, from Fox News, the most watched show, for him to say capitalism is not a religion, yeah, it might be the best. That's like mandatory to say for these guys, but it's not a religion. It's not something that we should avow to all the time. That sometimes you should put human life and what he calls the common good above it. It's kind of huge. It's an opening that we should learn how to exploit with these people and say, like, why should we even think about letting profit be the motive behind everything else, right? Why only think about it in these terms for some areas, right? Why not sustain that really it's people and the common good that should matter, and the reason why we should produce and our considerations for production should be grounded on meeting people's needs and making sure that they can flourish, and not on a small group of people getting exorbitantly rich through the profits that they make. But it's still an opening that we can exploit. The other thing is the point that you make about stopping technological development, and this gets at the assumptions that we have in the U.S. about what socialism is. Socialism as poverty and making everyone equally poor. And that's the complete opposite of like Marxian socialism. There's other forms of socialism that are like that, like the levers and a few other forms of historical utopian socialism that are grounded in like an ascetic understanding. We talked a little bit last stream we did together when we were covering Lasordo's paper about the ascetic Christians who were criticizing Lenin's turn towards the NEP and the sort of shift of focus towards developing the modes of production. But for Marxists, the idea is that one of the main reasons why capitalism has within itself, not externally, but within its own composition, the potential for socialism is because the development that we have is stifled by the relations of production, which is very easy to think about today. Like, what gets produced and why? Well, it's what's profitable. There's a whole host of things that don't get produced and don't even come into the conversation because we know that they're unprofitable to produce. So producing not for the sake of profit, but for other sakes, for other ends, obviously can allow production to be much more efficient when thought about through the lens of like, how is this meeting people's needs and allowing the common good, or everyone, human beings in general, to flourish. So self-driving trucks would take a whole bunch of necessary labor and make it unnecessary, right? It would free up what someone like Martin Hoagland calls socially socially free time, right? Instead of socially necessary labor time, socially free time, or socially allowed leisure time. Like, it would allow us to be freer people, not having to do necessary things, necessary work, and to be able to do other forms of creative work and exert our abilities in other things. And that's what a rational society would do. Like, oh my God, we're able to not have waitresses, or we're able to not have truck drivers. Awesome. Now we have tens of millions of people who don't have to do that 60 hours a week, and who can do something else freely. And maybe the rest of the work that we still have to do, now we could divide it so that each person has to work less and has more free time to spend with their families and to be creative and be artistic, etc., etc. That's what a rational socialist society would do, and that's what rational socialist societies are doing. So there's contradictions in Tucker's response. There's a lot of people on the left that I've seen react to this, like, oh my God, Tucker's based, and oh my God, he's the voice of reason. And to some extent, yeah, he's prioritizing the common good and human beings, but it has to be understood within a context that's already irrational, which is that, I mean, if you can develop something that force people to work, that allow people to work less, like, what are the assumptions that are guiding your idea of why we have to suppress this? It's because you think capitalism has to continue. And insofar as he's already questioning that, there's an opening that we can exploit and show that irrationality to him. But there's a rational kernel in it, and there's a deeply irrational kernel in it as well. There's a deeply irrational mystical shell that the rational kernel is embedded in. And I think we should talk about both, as you rightfully did.